Hello all and welcome back to Reddit Inside It, where upload schedules? What are you talking about? Today we'll be going over Best of Redditor Updates only because Thanksgiving happened and I didn't put my favorite story. Also, happy holidays to whatever you celebrate. On to our first story. Guest stole our Thanksgiving turkey. You know it's gonna be good. Our daughter Mary is visiting from college, and one day before she flew in, she says her boyfriend Chris is actually flying out to our city to visit friends over the break. Mary asked if he could come over for Thanksgiving. We had never met Chris before, but to be honest, we're not wild about him. As soon as Mary started dating him, we started seeing worrying changes in her. Our son, who's a couple years older, confided in us that Mary is getting into the party scene largely because of Chris. We've tried gently bringing up our concerns with Mary, but she shuts it down and has started to pull away from us. So because we don't want to alienate her, we said Chris could visit, but they need to stay in separate rooms. She said that wouldn't matter because he's booked a hotel room and she'll be staying there with him the whole weekend. Cut to Thanksgiving. Mary and Chris arrive. He's not the greatest. He makes a couple rude and snide remarks throughout the visit and hits the alcohol way harder than is appropriate. My family was in a very earnest mood, if that makes sense. Lots of emotion. And he was just dismissive and flippant and cast a shadow on everything. At one point, everyone starts telling stories about their favorite holidays at mother-in-law's house when she would go all out for my family's party. My husband and I stopped working in the kitchen to join the conversation. When we go back to the kitchen, maybe half an hour, I went to check the turkey in the oven, and it was gone. Completely missing. I asked my husband if he did something with the turkey. He was just confused as I was. We all looked over the kitchen and the house, but couldn't find it. We go out to the living room and ask everyone if they know what happened to the turkey. No one knows what we're talking about. At this point, I realize Chris isn't around. I pull Mary to the side and ask her where he is because I don't want to jump to conclusions and make accusations. She said he had to leave to go meet up with friends. I asked her to text him and ask if he knows what happened to the turkey. Mary kind of rolled her eyes. At this point, it's dawning on me that Chris probably stole the turkey and left out the back door while we were sharing stories with mother-in-law. But I'm just as confused to why anyone would do anything like that. I can't bring myself to actually make the accusation out loud. So we were left in the terrible position of having everything else ready, but no turkey. We had to go to break it to the family that we had no turkey, and everyone is confused and sad. Mary said she had to get going to an event with Chris, which deeply disappointed me. I told her as much, and she said she'll see us again later this weekend. My in-laws went driving around to restaurants and grocery stores and pieced together enough stuff that we were able to have a meal much later than we expected, but it felt like the whole day was ruined. Everyone was kind of murmuring about Chris leaving around the time the turkey disappeared, but no one wanted to actually accuse him out loud because it's such an explosive allegation and there's not actually any proof. I'm just confused why anyone would do such a thing, and heartbroken because my mother-in-law didn't deserve this at all. At one point, she teared up and pulled it all together. I'm also increasingly angry with my daughter, but I feel like I can't say anything because she'll just pull away more. Now, I'm just gonna add this in here before we get into the update. How do you steal a hot turkey? It was in the oven. There's so much mystery. Alright, on to the I was talking with my son today, and he told me last night Chris started taunting him over text about the missing turkey. So that settles it. Chris stole the turkey as a big F you to all of us. My son didn't say anything at the time because he didn't want to make people more upset than they already were. One of my husband's siblings was very mad at us for how things turned out and how mother-in-law was disrespected. Said sibling is not talking with us right now. I've tried calling and texting Mary, but she's so far ignoring me. That's all I have to say about this. Alright, on to update 2. Hi everyone, this incident has been on my family's mind this week and my son encouraged me to write an update. Last year I hoped to talk with Mary in person about what Chris did, but she blew me off and didn't visit home for the rest of Thanksgiving weekend. We spoke briefly on the phone a few days later, but she denied that Chris stole our turkey, even though Chris taunted my son about it, basically admitting what he did. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. The ripple effects were profound. My family expected her to live through Christmas, so it was very difficult to lose what we thought would be her last holiday. And it was even more bitter that the Thanksgiving that was her actual last holiday was ruined by Chris and his incomprehensible theft. From there, it got even worse. Mary flew in for my mother-in-law's funeral and mentioned that Chris might travel with her to see a concert in her city. We made it clear that he was not welcome in our home or at the funeral. He ultimately stayed at their college, but on the day of the visitation, a bomb threat was made against the funeral home and we all had to evacuate while the police conducted a search. The police were never able to prove it, but I strongly suspect that Chris made the threat. My mother-in-law's visitation was cut significantly short, denied a dignified end. Some people who wanted to pay their respects ultimately could not because of the evacuation and inspection. One of my husband's siblings has gone no contact with us because they blame my husband and I for ruining the end of mother-in-law's life by inviting Chris to Thanksgiving last year. Mary refused to take any responsibility on how her relationship with Chris has damaged our family. My husband, I, and Mary have mutually decided to go no contact. My son has minimal contact with Mary and follows her on social media. Apparently, Mary and Chris are still together. On to our next story, but hello everyone. Before we start this one, I just want to say this one does contain emotional manipulation and gas, so if any of that is bothering to you, don't listen to this next story. Alright, on to the next story. I'm a 30-year-old female and caused a major blow up in my family, and now none of them are talking to me. For background, my hometown is tiny, 500 population, and when I went 2 hours away to the city, about 15,000 people, for college, I loved it. I ended up staying after graduation, got married, and am happy here for a decade. I visit my hometown every few weeks or so, call and text my family near daily, and thought we were all good. My family's pretty small, just my brother, mom, stepdad, dad, and stepmom, and an aunt and uncle, mother's siblings that are never married with no kids. My mother's grandparents moved to my hometown when I was in high school, just down the street from us. My family has always been pretty drama-free, aside from my parents' divorce when I was a kid, and we've been happy. The step-parents were blended in perfectly, and we share holidays and celebrations together. We're all super close and just the perfect little group. Ever since I moved away, the topic of when am I moving back is constant, and I've always laughed it off. My hometown has nothing. You drive 30 minutes for milk and bread, 60 to 90 minute one-way commutes to work, and floods shut down the main road every Easter. I love the town, but I love here more. I have parks, stores, community events, and a library. The city is great. My family grumbles that I need to move back, but I refuse. I've been trying to encourage them to come here, especially since it's not an hour drive to the nearest medical facility. Now the meat and potatoes. Both my grandparents passed over COVID time. They were both old and their health had been falling for a while, so it was only a matter of time. Thankfully, they didn't catch that, made visiting them impossible. We survived mostly through FaceTime. They both passed in their sleep months apart. Both were cremated and secretly kept under the kitchen sink for safekeeping while the pandemic blew over. That was in 2021. Well, I just found out my family held a funeral for them and scattered the ashes in my uncle's maple grove over the summer. No one said a word to me about it. I visited numerous times before and after, and not one word. I only found out because my great uncle from California posted on Facebook a few weeks ago that he is entering hospice and was so thankful that his health stayed strong enough for him to see his little sister, my grandmother, to her final resting place. I was confused and called my mom. She was all, yeah, the funeral was had in July, remember? Y'all, I visited them for 4th of July and they did the funeral the 8th. Not a word to me. They had planned this for months, long enough to arrange my infirm uncle to be brought over from the other side of the country. Apparently, they talked about it all the time. Everyone was convinced I was at the funeral. They swear I was there. I can prove I wasn't there because Google's got my location history. My hubby is baffled because he was supposedly there too, but he had to work every weekend in June and July. Time clock doesn't lie. My family straight up forgot about me. I'm hurt and I'm sad. And they are mad at me for lying. They think I'm causing this drama over nothing. Nothing I say can convince them I wasn't there. My family is united in this. And they all put me on red until I admit I'm wrong. They think I've gone nuts. Either there's a doppelganger of me attending events, or my family doesn't want to admit they screwed up. I'm not backing down. Thanksgiving is coming up and my family's been vague posting on Facebook about forgetful kids and mental health. It's so freaking weird and I don't know if I'm in Bizarro world or what's going on. My mom's best friend reached out and said I should just admit I was wrong and apologize, and I'm causing my mom so much unnecessary stress. I asked her if she's checked everyone's home for CO2. She hung up on me. We checked ours for CO2 and our testers are working just fine. I have reached out to a few people in my hometown to check in on my folks, and they say they're all fine. I even spoke with the local volunteer firefighter group to see if they could check for gas leaks. Not sure if they were ever able to do. I just don't know what to do. I've shown them proof I wasn't there, but they know know I'm tech savvy and just assume I photoshopped it. Hubby says we need and we're going to be staying home this holiday season. On to the update. It's 11:27 and Thanksgiving just happened. Hubby and I stayed home, we got a small turkey and made our own little Thanksgiving. It was nice. We ate around noon, then watched a movie, and later sat outside with a bottle of wine to watch the sun set behind the trees and neighbor houses. We usually take the day before off, drive to my folks, stay the night, and then help with the Thanksgiving Day cooking. So it wasn't until Wednesday night that my mom broke the silence. Mom called and asked when I was showing up. I told her that we were staying home this year, but for them to have a happy Thanksgiving and to give the rest of the family my love. She was quiet for a long time after I said that, and I think she eventually mumbled an okay or something and hung up. It wasn't an angry hang up, just a hang up. On Thanksgiving Day, I sent a group Thanksgiving gift to our family group chat. I received a few happy Thanksgivings back, but no one said anything else. There's been no posts on Facebook. On to update number 2. So I think I mentioned in one of my comments that my dad and I usually talk on the phone every Sunday morning. We're both early risers, so we chat over our morning coffees and watch the sunrise. Him and I haven't really spoken since all of this went down, and it's been tough. I'm used to talking to him, you know? Well, I was sitting outside in my usual spot, watching the sunrise and freezing my butt off, and he called. I'm not entirely sure how to describe the emotions I felt. It was a mix of panic, hope, terror, happiness, and dread. I ended up answering because I just had to know what he wanted. It was an awkward conversation. He didn't address the current drama, but instead tiptoed around the situation with all the grace of a cow on stilts. For instance, a simple "how are you doing" type question was answered with a "not good," and the whole conversation would stall out for a bit because he knew why I wasn't doing well. So we ended up talking about the weather, the various winter birds that we'd seen in our feeders, and the Christmas decorations all around town. Things like that. Eventually, he asked if we were coming out for Christmas, and sounded sad when I told him we weren't. He asked if him and stepdad could come visit us instead. I told him it wasn't a good idea this year, that hubby and I were going to spend a quiet holiday together. I let him know he should be receiving some gifts at his P.O. box any day now, so to please pick them up from the post office and put them under the family tree for everyone. He said he'd ship ours out to us as well. And that was pretty much it. No crazy drama to report. The only posts on Facebook have been the usual Christmas excitement ones, countdown, photos of Santa, silly gift ideas, photos accompanying Christmas parties. On a personal note, hubby and I aren't doing alright. Our health is good, our spirits are high, and we're as solid as ever. We each got Christmas bonuses at our jobs, so we're excited about that. They're not large ones, but we're happy to have them. We've also done some advent calendars for the first time ever. I got him a Lego one, he got me a hot chocolate one. We're going to do the calendars again next year, maybe make a tradition out of it. Alright, on to the next update. I've received a lot of messages in private DMs urging me to check into inheritance and such. I'm really touched that a lot of internet strangers are worried about me, and I wanted to ensure everyone that inheritance is most likely not an issue here. I'd almost be relieved if it was, because then it would at least make some sense. Money does weird things to people, you know? No one in my family is wealthy by any means. After my grandparents passed, their small estate was used to pay for their end-of-life expenses, and the remaining assets split up. Everyone directly related equals split, so excluded my dad and the step-parent. I don't remember the exact amount I received, but it was around $5,000 if I recall. My brother gave me his share too, so I could finish paying off my college debt while the interest freeze was active. The great uncle from California has kids and grandkids, and great-grandkids of his own, but also isn't wealthy. I think one of his kids makes good money doing something in finance, but I'm not entirely sure. I can't imagine he left us anything, as we hardly knew him. My mom, aunt, and uncle only met him a few times in their lives, and my brother and I even less. Grandma and him were close, but I don't think he liked my grandpa much. On to our next update. Yesterday was Sunday, but I didn't answer my dad when he called. I just really didn't feel up to a pointless chat, so let it go to voicemail. He tried to reach me a few times throughout the day, but I didn't answer. Our bestie last minute invited us over to his house for Christmas Day lunch today, so husband and I were busy all Christmas Eve making cookies, peanut brittle, and homemade suckers and hard candies for his kids. Mom tried to reach out as well, but I also ignored her calls. We had a blast at lunch! Our friends' kids were a lot of fun to be around. They got some techie presents from their grandparents, Quest VR, headset, and Steam Decks, lucky little rascals. Friend and his wife aren't good with tech, while hubby and I are, so we helped them set up while our friend played a good host to his folks and in-laws. The grandparents didn't realize that a Steam Deck required a Steam account, so we got all the kids their own accounts set up, added them to our Steam's friend list, and gifted them some games. We also bought a few VR games for their headset, and they were off to the races with Beat Saber in no time. As for my fault, my brother texted and asked if we could talk sometime tomorrow. I think me ignoring mom and dad has caused some kind of upset, which they deserve. On to our next update. December 26th. I spoke with my brother over the phone this morning. For starters, he apologized for everything. Him and I are good for now. For a bit of background, my brother and I are only 2 years apart. There wasn't a lot of kids around growing up, so the two of us were often stuck doing stuff together. So we have a lot of shared interests and passions. He's been pretty silent on this whole matter, but still part of the group, if you know what I mean. I think the thought of losing him out of my life was probably the most painful, because he's always been there. He was my rock until I met my husband. He's definitely a mama's boy though, so anything mom wanted, he made sure he got, and I'm happy to have him back. Without much further ado, here's the story from the horse's mouth. Mom apparently had a cancer scare last year, which no one told me about, go figure, and dad had a stent put in his heart back in January, which I did know about. This sense of mortality apparently lit a fire under mom's butt to try and get me back home. But since I wasn't reacting to her passive-aggressive hinting, she and stepmom decided to go full crazy. My great-uncle's health was so bad, and he'd been asking about funeral arrangements for his sister, my grandma, for a while, so the moms decided to plan it, and used the event as a giant middle finger to me. They kept all the planning pretty hush-hush between the two of them, so no one on our side of the family actually knew about the funeral until 2 weeks before. They'd invited hubby and I. Anything about it. No one thought to mention, confirm, or check with. The plan was to scatter the ashes, say a few words, and maybe head to town for lunch. It was a small affair. The moms didn't even tell the family that our great-uncle was coming for it. Like I said, it was a pretty small thing. Barely a footnote. No one thought it was odd because we're pretty chill people. 4th of July happens. Hubby and I are out. No one thought to mention it, as we're all busy celebrating and having a good time. Anytime the topic of this weekend would start, the conversation would be quickly shifted by one of the moms. We went back home. 8th of July happened. Great uncle rolls into town with a few of his kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids, and it's a surprise to everyone but the mom. Everyone drives to the Maple Grove, and the moms have a ton of food and stuff. It's a full-blown party. No one on my side noticed I wasn't there, because there were so many faces outside the usual group. They did the spreading of the ashes, said their words, they ate, had a great time. It wasn't and all his side left with him that they realized I wasn't there and that I hadn't been there. And this is where the crazy went up a notch. My brother says the moms were happy no one noticed I wasn't there, and that this was the proof everyone needed. This is the proof to everyone that I needed to move back because I was so easily forgotten about. Because none of them had thought to reach out, right? They basically did a ton of guilt tripping manipulation BS, and it made everyone upset at me for not showing up. Somehow it was my fault for being excluded. So suddenly everyone was on their side with sticking it to me. But then a few months went by and tempers cooled. And then I guess the horror set in, followed by the shame. They were in too deep. How do you undo something like this? And since I hadn't brought it up, I guess they figured they would all stay quiet and hope I never asked about a funeral. That's when I discovered the situation from my great uncle's Facebook and called my mom, who panicked and went on with the stupidest solution, claiming I was there. Don't I remember? I ended up talking with a few friends from high school mentioning the situation, and word got back to those in town. So suddenly, town gossip and the little old church ladies got involved. Was I, or was I not at the funeral? Did my family forget to invite me to the funeral of the only grandparents I'd ever know? Or am I just causing a ruckus? My brother said they all went with mom's answer. Of course they wouldn't forget me. Of course I was there. Of course they're good people. And it just snowballed. The family expected me to eventually fold. I'm usually a non-confrontational person, so me sticking to my guns was unexpected. And then I missed Thanksgiving, and now Christmas, with no sign of backing down. I guess the realization that I could just stop being part of their lives is setting in, and my parents are panicking. He's tried just getting them to apologize and explain, but stubbornness prevailed. They want a rug sweep, but I'm not letting. My brother is upset with everything that's happened, realized just how crappy it has all been, and wants nothing to do with it anymore. But since he lives with my mom, he can't get away from it. He has asked if he can come stay with us for a bit. I spoke to hubby, and he's in agreement with me that my brother can come crash in our spare bedroom for as long as he wants. Brother works remotely, so it's no trouble for him to pick up and go. I believe he's making the trip today or tomorrow. know. I'm not entirely sure, but I expect crap to hit the fan when he arrives. On a side note, hubby's stoked that my brother and I made up. The two usually game together, but haven't due to the situation. He's downstairs right now setting up his man cave in preparation for my brother's arrival. I'm happy to see him so excited. On to our next update. My brother rolled in late last night. He'd obviously been crying, and when I opened the door, he just held me and sobbed. I'd never seen him like that before, and soon both of us were standing in the doorway one another. He kept apologizing over and over again. He said he wasn't sure why he went with it. He just kept saying sorry. Hubby got him all set up in the spare bedroom while brother and I talked. My brother's a wreck. He's always been a big guy, but he's lost a lot of weight and his clothes just hang off him. If I didn't know any better, I'd think he was on drugs. We talked for a little bit before bed, and he re-explained everything for my husband. I had told hubby the story, but it was just so weird that hearing it again helped. This morning, my brother was up at dawn making coffee and getting his workday going. Hubby's off all week, luckily, so hubby made us working folks some pancakes and bacon. So far, everything's peaceful. We've decided to not answer any calls from our family. They've been made aware that he arrived safely and that we are going to spend the New Year's together, and that we're not answering any calls until January 1st. They may text if they wish. I'm sure they're losing their mind. Serves them right. On to our next update, January 2nd. Not too much of an update, things here have been quiet. My brother settled in nicely, and he's a great housemate. Our place isn't very big, but we have a full basement and a nice outside patio porch area, so it doesn't feel crowded with the extra addition. He's a quiet and clean guy. No hassle at all. He got some fresh clothes from the Walmart, a haircut, and trimmed his beard. He's more presentable now. He's a lady killer when he gets things cleaned up. He's made nice with the very nosy but kind retired couple next door that is adapting to city living nicely. Folks back home have been mostly well behaved. There's been a few texts back and forth as we're not answering calls. Mom mainly wants to know when brother's coming back, but he's keen on staying here for a while. Mom said I can't keep him, and I told her he's a grown man who can do what he wants. Brother says he blocked her after she ordered him to return. Brother has tentatively asked if he could stay long term should he decide to, or at least longer than a usual visitor to stay, which I'm fine with. He has a good paying job and couldn't afford an apartment, but he's never lived on his own and I guess he has some anxiety about it. Should that be the case, he'll start paying us some rent and we'd probably adjust to give him the basement as his own space. And that is the end of the story. This whole story seems crazy, from the stepmother and mother not inviting the child to the funeral, which is just a ridiculously crazy thing to do. Why do it that way? I feel like there's other ways you could have done that. But yeah. Thank you for watching this video. Do the YouTube things. Enjoy the next whatever time I just sit here and keep muttering words for. So then that way, you don't have end cards over the end of your content, because who likes that?